if you put the right amount of pressure from the bottom of the device, you can actually click the trackpad, which I think is a little problematic. The fact that you can do this to begin with, it makes me question the longevity of this keyboard. It's been a week since I recorded that video, and I've had a little bit of time to look into the HP X2 11 detachable keyboard's clicking problem. I was sort of hoping that I had gotten a defected keyboard and that others weren't experiencing the same issue, but turns out a lot of people are experiencing the issue with this detachable keyboard. That alone probably wouldn't be enough to make me make an update video here, but I also realized that in my previous video, I said that the problem with this keyboard was that I could click the trackpad from the bottom, which is true, but after some usage and after some observations and experimentations, I realized that you can also make the trackpad click by simply applying pressure on either side of the trackpad, on the areas that exist on either side of the trackpad. By applying pressure on them, I can make the trackpad click, which I don't know, seems like a problem that consumers should know about before purchasing the HP X2 11, so here I am with my keyboard update video. So what's causing all this clicking on this detachable keyboard? The truthful answer from me is I don't have an exact idea, but I do have a good guess. And my guess is, well, the best way to explain this is through visualization. So let's say my arm here is this entire bottom area found on the detachable keyboard. So let's say my arm is that area. And let's say that this hand here is the trackpad. And this space found on either side of this hovering hand is basically representative of the non-trackpad area found on either side of the trackpad. Now, one of the things that happens when you put enough pressure or force on either side of the trackpad here is you end up bending the keyboard a little bit. Not enough to like cause irreparable damage, but enough to put enough pressure to make it bend a bit. Now, once it starts bending, of course, the whole keyboard will start bending in the direction from which the force or pressure is coming from. And after a certain point of bending, what seems to happen is the clicking mechanism in the trackpad seems to go off. To be clear, simply applying pressure on both sides of the trackpad isn't enough to make this mechanism go off. The pressure needs to be enough that the whole keyboard starts to bend in one direction or the other for the clicking mechanism to go off. This reality with the trackpad, I'm actually not going to criticize the HP X2 11 too harshly on, mainly because I actually think that a lot of detachable keyboards that are made in this manner also have this problem. In fact, the Lenovo Duet's detachable keyboard also experiences the same phenomenon as well. I also want to add a correction here that in my previous video, I stated that that the clicking problem didn't exist with the Lenovo Duet's detachable keyboard at all. I was wrong about that. It was a less noticeable or serious problem with the Lenovo Duet's detachable keyboard though. So if the fact that this sort of phenomenon can happen with the detachable keyboard is not the problem with the HP X2 11's detachable keyboard, what is? Well, put it simply, it's the amount of pressure that is required to make this clicking phenomenon go off that is the problem here. Simply resting my palms on either side of the trackpad here is enough for this clicking sound to go off. It takes that little pressure to make this keyboard bend enough for the clicking noise to go off. That is a problem. Now I say problem here, but it is worth considering that this isn't as big of a problem if you tend to use the detachable keyboard and the HP X2 11 on a desk or a flat, hard surface like a desk. Going back to my phenomenon arm visualization here, which by the way, I don't know how accurate this is. It's just a guess made based on observations I've had about the keyboard itself. So, take it with a grain of salt, but I think I'm right. Back to the beautiful visualization though. Remember, one of the requirements for the trackpad clicking sound to go off is that the keyboard be allowed to bend to the point where the clicking sound mechanism is allowed to go off. So the simplest way to solve this problem is stop the keyboard from bending so much. When the keyboard, or at least the bottom end of the keyboard, is on a hard surface, you can't easily bend either side of the keyboard, which takes us back to a desk, which is the perfect environment in which this keyboard will have enough reinforcements from the bottom to stop it from bending all over the place. And sure enough, I don't notice any keyboard problems whatsoever when using this keyboard on a desk. If you're someone who's using the HP X2 11 regularly on a desk, I doubt you'll notice that this problem is even a problem. On the other hand though, if you place this keyboard on an area that is less stable, less firm, more soft or squishy, or has less support, the HP X2 11's detachable keyboard does experience a fair amount of the clicking phenomenon, which is why I'm going to call this, whole clicking madness here. I'm just going to call it the clicking phenomenon from here on in. So this led me to trying out the keyboard on a variety of different environments, starting off with what it was like to use this detachable keyboard on the edge of a desk, where there's a little bit of support, but not a complete amount of support. And I'm going to put a light amount of pressure with my palm here onto this side of the trackpad, and you can clearly hear a click. Once again, going back to my guess here, allowing one side or the other of the trackpad to bend is enough to make the clicking sound go off. So obviously, if one side of the detachable keyboard is just not being supported by a hard surface, or really anything for that matter, then of course this clicking problem will come up. After trying to use the keyboard on a desk, on the edge of a desk, I tried using it on the carpet. Like usual, let me just place both my palms onto the palm rest area here, and okay, I can definitely, I heard a click right now. Okay, so if both my palms are on here, it doesn't seem to be a big problem, but if I were to adjust a little bit and one of my palms, let's say my left palm, is more heavily on this area, while the other palm is lifting up a little bit, maybe I'm trying to hit the brightness key here. If I do something like that, then we get a click. Using the keyboard on the carpet was a little bit of an interesting experience because the carpet, being essentially ground, did offer some level of support, but it wasn't as firm as, say, that of a desk, so it did allow for some clicking depending on what kind of position I was in when typing on this detachable keyboard. This, of course, opens up the possibility that it may be tolerable to use this detachable keyboard on softer surfaces like that of a carpet floor or a bed, or some kind of surface like that. To make it crystal clear, I was still experiencing clicking problems on the carpet floor. It just wasn't nearly as bad as I expected it to be. It's also worth noting here that my carpet that I have here is a lot firmer than maybe some of the other carpets that other places have, so your experience may vary. And finally, I did spend some time forcing myself to use the HP X2 11 with this keyboard on my lap, and it was a very unpleasant experience, not just posture-wise, but because of the keyboard. It's click ahoy. It's clicking everywhere, and it would just continuously click. Very annoying experience. I can totally understand why other people who are dealing with this problem, who are regular lap typers, were incredibly frustrated with the HP X2 11. And when you think about my arm visualization here, it makes sense that you would have an unpleasant experience using this keyboard on a lap. The lap does not offer much support, or at the very least, it doesn't offer enough support to stop the keyboard from bending to the point where you will experience the clicking phenomenon. Fortunately, though, there is a silver lining here. The clicking that you experience, the clicking phenomenon that I've discussed here, does not actually register as being actual mouse clicks when connected to the HP X2 11, meaning that all this is just really annoying sounds. It's not actually your mouse randomly clicking on different things. If you want a mouse click or a pointer click to register on the HP X2 11, you actively have to use the trackpad. Imagine how annoying it would have been if every time your keyboard bends slightly, you end up hitting a link or clicking on a link that you just really didn't want to click on. That would be horrible. Fortunately, that is not the case here. Along with experimentations, of course, I also confirmed that others were experiencing the same problem, and their responses, which I found on various sites like Twitter, forum sites, as well as YouTube comments, their comments could be divided up into three groups. The first group being the people who found this, clicking phenomenon experience so annoying that they just simply had to return the device. The second group were the people who thought that this sort of quality keyboard was unacceptable for a device that costs $599. And then the third group, who also shared the sentiments of the first two groups, were frustrated that the HP X2 11's keyboard was sort of a downgrade when compared to the keyboard that came with the predecessor of the HP X2 11, the original HP X2 Chromebook. Adding my 2 cents here, to the first group of people who just couldn't stand the clicking phenomenon to the point where they had to return the HP X2 11, I get where they're coming from. I don't necessarily agree with that perspective, but I get it. I certainly think that if you are someone who constantly uses a laptop or device to type on their lap, this problem with the keyboard is enough to take the HP X2 11 off of your potentials list. It's just not going to be worth it for you. For the rest of us, though, who like to use our devices on a firm surface like that of a desk, this isn't going to be that big of a problem. I don't think this takes away from the overall device experience. Putting aside the price for a second here, I'm just talking about the overall device experience. Is this keyboard problem serious enough for me to say avoid buying the HP X2 11? No. But can I see this being a problem? Yes. As to the second group who feel that, for a device that costs $599, this sort of quality keyboard is unacceptable, I 100% agree. This is not a problem that we should be having on a $599 device. Look, I think HP could have done a lot better here, and I get what HP was going for with this, detachable keyboard. It's nice and thin, and it looks really great. I complimented it a lot in my first impressions video because it is worthy of compliment. It does look good. The keys do feel good. The problem is, I think the thinness of this device is part of the reason why it's so easy to bend. And I can't help but wonder if maybe it was a little bit thicker like the detachable keyboard found on the Lenovo Duets. I think maybe if it was thicker, we wouldn't have this clicking problem. I also can't help but wonder if maybe the trackpad's rather loud clicking noise is part of the reason why we're all being annoyed by this clicking phenomenon. Like I stated previously, the Lenovo Duet also experiences the same phenomenon. Add enough pressure on either side of the trackpad and you're going to get a clicking sound going off. The thing about the Lenovo Duet, though, is that it's a little bit hard to notice that the clicking phenomenon is going off because the trackpad is naturally quieter. Now, if the keyboard had been thicker and had it had a quieter, firmer trackpad, would people have complained? Probably. They probably would have said, hey, this keyboard looks a little bit ugly for the HP X2 11 for a $600 device. Yeah, people would have complained, but I think that sort of complaint is better than complaints about, hey, this trackpad just randomly clicks on me when I'm trying to use it on my lap. Of course, using different material for this detachable keyboard could have also solved this problem, or at least made this problem less serious. And to the third group of people who are, complaining about the HP X2 11's detachable keyboard from the perspective and from the background of having used the original HP X2 Chromebook, I really do sympathize with them. The original HP Chromebook X2, which, if I'm not mistaken, was the first detachable Chromebook we ever got, was really impressive. I never really owned one personally, but I did have a friend who did, and he would let me play around with it whenever he wasn't using it, and it was such a good device, and the detachable keyboard that came with that one was really impressive. When the HP Chromebook X2 was attached to this detachable keyboard, it would basically turn the Chrome OS tablet into a clamshell-style laptop, basically making it into a perfect device for people who like to use their devices on their lap. Putting aside the spec differences and looking at the detachable keyboards alone, one can see why people who owned the original HP Chromebook X2 are disappointed that what should be a successor to that original HP X2 has such a bad quality keyboard. This frustration is even more understandable when you consider that the original HP Chromebook X2, before it got discontinued, was being sold at an MSRP of $599. The same price, the same MSRP as this new HP Chromebook X2 11. So that's the deal with the HP Chromebook X2 11. I'm disappointed with HP here. I am disappointed in the quality of this keyboard. I expected better. I expected better from a device that costs $600. Let's just leave it at that. Anyway, it's going to take me a few more weeks before I come out with my full review of the HP Chromebook X2 11 overall. But in the meantime, if you enjoyed this video or found this video to be helpful in any way, shape, or form, make sure to hit that like button. And if you want to see more content about the HP Chromebook X2 11 or other Chromebooks or other tech content in general, make sure to subscribe to the Octillionth Tech YouTube channel. Thanks for watching.